Into Champions.
Hey everybody, how we doing? Mark Wayner II here with Champions Real Estate Team at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Ambassador Real Estate Company. Joining us today is Russ Williams, as always, as we do our Talking Live real estate segment here every Wednesday over the lunch hour, just kind of get you caught up on what's going on in the real estate market in the Omaha metro area. As we know out there, it is pretty much the wild, wild west. We just had kind of a sales meeting at Berkshire Hathaway yesterday and just talking to other agents, around the company of what's going on out there. And I think Russ is seeing the same thing. But we'll kind of jump straight into the numbers that we got going on this week, as we always do. So numbers are pretty much similar about what they were last week, 330 new listings, down from last week, which was about 390. So down about 60 new listings, but our new contracts were higher than last week. So some of those homes that have been sitting on the market a little bit for maybe an extra day or two are basically off the market. We had about 400 new contracts written last week. And then we have 307 sold homes. So that's down from the week prior, which is, typical because 60 days ago, we didn't have that much on the inventory. It was still, cold outside, all that good stuff. So those sold homes are kind of getting off the market, pulling those sold signs out of the yards. And let's take a look at big picture, 30,000 foot view, looking at the big picture. So we have about 1,225 new homes, 1,225 active homes on the market that you can go look at today. And I took out the no-show listings, which basically are listings that we can't show until basically they're getting the houses ready and stuff like that. But that put us up about 1,300 or so. Homes for sale in the Douglas and Sarpy County area is just under 600. Breaking that down farther into existing homes, we have about 304 homes as of this morning at about 1045. And new construction listings is about 280. So ultimately, as we talked on every week, we're still very low in inventory. The market is very, very active. Showed a house last night, and there was probably about 20 or so business cards on the agent cards on the table from other agents that shown it that day, and it just went live yesterday. So that's one of those homes that's going to be probably sold here pretty darn quick. The other thing I was kind of looking at, just kind of out of curiosity, I was taking a look at what was going on, this time last year. And let me pull it up here, go on our trend graphics report. So when we're looking at the average sold price of what's going on since this time last year. So looking down here in the bottom right in the middle here, from this time last year of March, so this basically gives the whole month, our average sold price is now $270,000, up 13% from last year. But the interesting thing that I looked at, just right above that is the average active listing price. So what's currently on the market today is at about 416,000 is what the average home for sale is out there in the marketplace today. That is up 21%, almost 22% from last year. So when we kind of take a look at what's going on in the market, and we kind of, advise and coach and educate our clients here at Champions Real Estate Team, as we kind of look at the big picture of it, is that there's no better time than to buy right now and no cheaper of a time to buy than right now. Because as we look at it, we can't predict the future, but as trends have been going, there's not as much supply coming on the market. There's obviously a ton of demand, more buyers entering the buyer pool, and those prices typically are only going to go up. So if you're thinking about, well, let's wait till things cool down, I don't see it cooling down anytime, in the near future, and if you were waiting this time last year to cool down or what's going to happen with the pandemic, you're now looking at houses that are 20% more, on the list price. Sold prices are up about 14%. I think what a lot of that equates to on the new active listings is probably a lot of the new construction homes that are out there. There's some, the big builders that are building a lot of homes. I saw some of their prices go up $20,000, overnight because just, accounting for the materials prices that have gone up, your lumber and your appliances and things of that sort, the cost to make the windows and things of that. So that's what we're seeing is it getting in right now in those homes is now is the time, especially with interest rates where they're at. And we'll touch base with Russ on what the interest rates are doing. When we look at inventory, this is the inventory chart here, bottom left-hand side. So from last month, we're up 17% in pending listings. Number sold is up. And as we look here in the middle column from last year, we're down almost 60% in listings, in active listings for sale. That's a huge number. It's one of those, it's getting out there and knocking on doors, us as agents, that if you have, specific neighborhoods And it's figuring out who's selling their home. If there's neighborhood that you like a floor plan, a style, be it 2-story ranch, anyone here at Champions Real Estate Team's happy to go knock on the door and find that house for you, and being flexible in that manner of it, going through there. So, but that's just one of those things. And then when we're kind of looking at offers, Jeff Peterson and I were talking yesterday. Jeff is on the Champions team, and just we go back and forth and and learn from each other and what's going on, what we're seeing in the marketplace. Over the last couple of weeks, I've written a bunch of contracts, got a couple accepted, and what is it taking to get that house? Well, some of the houses that we don't get, I'll talk to the agent and try to see, where we are at and how we competed in the competition, and then adjust accordingly on our next offer. Well, what we're seeing now is offers are basically going anywhere from 10 to 15, if not more % above listing price. So if it's $200,000 house, people are offering, $20,000 more, $30,000 more on those houses. Now, does that make sense? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But if we look at it from last year, those houses are up 20% on the average active list price. So that market, basically, if you did that last year, you've caught up to that you maybe thought you overpaid for the house, but you've caught up to that already in this point. So that's what we're looking at, is that ultimately we don't have a crystal ball. We can't predict the future. We don't know if that's going to go up 20%, 15%, 5% next year or go down. There's other things that are out of our control, globally and, and economically and things of that sort. But it's one of those things that we do know, supply and demand. The cost of dirt isn't getting any cheaper. The cost of building isn't getting any cheaper, and the entry level homes that you can get in new construction are about $250,000 now. Now if that jumps up again next year, maybe that's 275, 260, where's that number going to be? And that's just the thing that we're trying to help with. Our clients sit down and educate and go over those details with them and find those, right prices and what makes sense. And ultimately, at the end of the day, is what mortgage payment are you comfortable with? That you can put your head on the pillow at night and say, okay, great, I'm comfortable with this. We can still go out, entertainment, all that good stuff. We're not having to stay home, and being house poor where you're just making a house payment. That's the things that we look at, when we're going over those things with our clients. From a seller's aspect of it, yes, the prices are increasing, and it is a seller's market, but your house better be in top-notch shape. There's some, houses that I've shown in the last, weeks or so that, needed new trim, needed all this stuff. And your clients are walking through going, they know what 250 gets them. They know what 400 gets them. They know what 500 gets them because they've seen them or they've written other offers, and they just aren't going to pay that for those houses. So it's one of those things. Yes, you can sell it for a price, but it's making sure that if you want to maximize those dollars, there's things you can do, or you price it accordingly and you let the buyers kind of determine what that value is to them. Because there's contracts that I've missed out on, called the agent, and the agent's like, Mark, your offer was great. It was strong, but these other offer, one other offer, two other offers were crazy, obnoxiously high. And, as a seller, we can't not take those and roll the dice. And there's people that are paying the difference in appraisal. So basically, if you have a house that say, let's list it at 250, and it goes up to 275, but that house only appraises for 265, there's a $10,000 shortage. And so what that means is either that seller's got to reduce the price back down to what the bank will loan, or that buyer would have to come to the table with an additional $10,000, to close the deal on that house. And some buyers are willing to do that. Essentially, you're overpaying, potentially for that house, at least what the bank and the appraiser feels. But the buyer market is basically determining that price is going up because they may have gotten other offers that are in that 270 ballpark for that house. So those are the things that we're looking at. And inevitably, you look back at the data here on the market here, on the trend graphics reports here, that the average list price, going up, and the average sold price is going up. So at what point is that going to catch up to you? And I know Russ and I, right before we got on, he's got a tool that he's starting to use to, and he can introduce to you guys. And we're always trying to find something new that's really going to help educate and help you guys make that educated decision going forward. And so that's something that I guess we could touch on too, if Russ wants to, piggyback on that. But yeah, so I guess that's kind of what we're looking at, is being very competitive in the marketplace, in that aspect of it. So if you're looking to buy, looking to sell, give us a holler. Happy to help you, in that 30,000 foot view of what's going on in that ballpark. So Russ, how are we doing, sir?
Doing pretty well. Mark, yet again this week, we've seen interest rates continue with their slow march upwards. Again, the best rates of the year were February 11th, and ever since then, week over week, we've seen interest rates move upwards, and we expect that to continue at least for the next several months, if not beyond that. As we all know, the Ever Given, the big ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal, was freed up. And that's a good analogy, a good comparison, if you will, to what we're seeing in the price of building supplies and goods. The supply chains are still suffering from COVID. They're kind of shut down, which is partially why we see a delay in some new construction, as well as we see the increased material costs, whether it be lumber, drywall. We don't have the production fully ramped up yet, although we are starting to see that happen. For example, today the ADP jobs report came out showing 517,000 new jobs created, usually the first week of the month, first Friday, as a matter of fact. The Bureau of Labor Statistics will release the jobs numbers, and we anticipate that or are estimating actually that there could be as many as 500,000 new jobs that are announced on Friday for the month of March. Anything above that's going to probably push the stock market higher, bond prices lower, which is going to drive interest rates higher. At the same time, we have President Biden speaking later today, making a pitch for the $2 trillion stimulus plan. Now, right now, for those of us that are paying taxes, we know that there's not enough tax revenue being collected to pay for that. So how is the government going to pay for that? They're going to issue treasury debt. And that influx of treasury debt onto the market is going to create an oversupply, if you will, of debt instruments that investors can buy, competing with mortgage bonds that are out there. So in the event that you're in the market for a fixed income investment like a bond, you have the option of choosing between a treasury debt or a mortgage bond, which ultimately is going to mean you're not going to have to overpay for those bonds, which means it's going to likely push bond prices down, yields higher, which pushes mortgage rates higher. At the same time, we're seeing some inflationary pressures building on the horizon as a result of the COVID shutdowns of last year. So having said all that, Mark, and to piggyback on what you said just a few moments ago, it's very important that if you're looking at buying real estate, that you stay confident and follow the advice of your real estate professional. Make sure that your real estate professional, and the Champions team knows this better than anybody, you need to make sure they know all the strategies that can help you compete with the multiple offers that you're likely to face when you put offers in. So I highly encourage you, if you don't have a real estate team that you're working with, that you reach out to Mark and his team, who are very familiar with the marketplace and what it's going to take to win that bid. I don't encourage you to wait until next year, because as Mark pointed out, when we have this tremendous demand for homes, and we have supply that right now is 30% nationwide below what supply was at the same time last year, you're not going to be seeing a home selling for less than list price. It's just not going to happen, folks. Buy at today's price. Work with a team that's going to give you strategies to help you win, give you the best opportunity to win those bids. That way you can buy at today's price or the best price possible, and use today's rates, which are the best available, given that next year we anticipate they could be higher. Mark, did I miss anything?
No, I think to kind of piggyback on that we just saw on that, the trend graphics, we're 60% less houses than we were this time last March. Yep. And the other thing is here and there's over about 3,000 real estate agents in Omaha, and just under 30% of them did not sell a house last year. Yep. And then if you take a look at the ones that maybe sold one or two houses, that could potentially push it up to 40-50% of the agents that did not sell a house last year. And so it's one of those that working with an agent at the Champions team that's in this on a daily grind, finding houses for our clients, selling houses for our clients. We know the strategies and the ways to get a seat at the table, and that's what I talk to my clients is, ultimately our goal is when we're in 20 offers on a house, we want to call back from that listing agent saying, would your client do X, or, have you, giving us a counter that we can say yes or no. If we get a call back and say, hey, would your client go up to, this price? It's a little too high. It doesn't make sense, but that at least gives you an opportunity rather than me getting a phone call, text, or an email saying, hey, really appreciate your offer. Thank you very much for your time, but unfortunately the seller went with another offer. You don't have a chance to even make your offer better, adjust it, change it, whatever. So that's what we're looking at, is that, a Champions team, when we're doing transactions and doing enough, a lot of transactions per year, finding an agent that you work well with and that you can, listen to, and that will coach and educate you and not tell you what you want to hear. Yeah, if you want this house, you should pay 250, 275, 400, 500,000. But does that make sense for you? And are you looking at the big picture of it? What's going around on the areas of town, that you're looking in that can help drive that price or keep that price where it's at. And it's not, ultimately we don't have, like I said, a crystal ball, but you can kind of see what's going on in the commercial real estate around there, what's going on in the developments, and is that going to make sense 5 years, 10 years down the road that is going to hopefully, keep that housing, demand and price up.
Mark, respectfully, I understand that people want to help out their second cousin who has a best friend who has a real estate license and sells a house every 2 or 3 years. Folks, I'm telling you, if you want to buy a house, this is not the time to not work with a professional that does this full time. It's very important that you work with people who are familiar with the market and know the strategies to win the bid. This is not a typical market. Make sure you have professional full-time representation.
Yeah. I had a buyer that I was working with a year or two ago, and it's kind of right when we started using escalation clauses. And the agent and we wrote an offer, very, very strong offer. The agent calls me back, the listing agent, and says, "Hey, Mark, unfortunately we didn't get your offer." And I was like, "Are you serious?" And I was like, "Our offer was really, really, really strong." And I said, "So your contract, I go, ultimately, won't disclose the terms, which, understand." And I said, "But your offer was above X." And she goes, "Well, no." And I said, "Well, if it wasn't, then my client, everything else was all the same." I go, "My client's offer was better by a lot." And she's like, "Oh, well," I go, has the seller signed the paperwork yet and accepted? Well, no. I go, "Well, I think you should I go, here's what the escalation clause, we'll pay, $1,000 above the next highest net offer." I go, "And here's where it's at." And I go, "We'll pay more, this," and she's like, "Well, let me call the seller and let me talk to him over." And then the seller, the husband of the seller calls me. And I go over it with him and I said, "Here's what my client's offer is." And he's like, "Well, yeah, that makes more sense." And I said, "Well, it's up to you guys." I go, "Talk to your listing agent, your representation. And if it makes sense, we'd love to buy the house and we'd love to move forward with you." And at that point, we got the house, because the agent didn't quite understand what the escalation and how that worked itself out. And I'm just kind of like, it's spelled out in there. And it's one of those things that after that point, when those escalations first started becoming, now they're more commonplace, but I'm willing to call and talk to those agents, say, "Hey, here's what our offer is," and make sure that the agent the other counterpart that you're working with, that we have a good working relationship. Here at Champions Real Estate Team, I teach CE classes for real estate school. And Russ teaches the financing side of it. So, when I'm teaching CE classes, I'm teaching other agents, and we get and it's when you're all playing nice in the sandbox, you all work well together. That can even get you an offer accepted, all things being equal. And, the agent knows you and you know that agent, and maybe they don't know the other agent. The other agent can be a great agent, but they just don't have a personal relationship or know them. That can literally be the decision maker when everything's equal. So it's just a matter of just being out there and working in the business day in and day out, and there's great, agents that are not doing it full time that are great agents, but it's just a matter of making sure that they understand exactly what's going on. And, many companies have many training programs and great managers that help their agents out. And that's great. But when you literally got to write you show the house at 5, you got to have an offer in by 8 o'clock. Sometimes your manager may not necessarily be available to get those questions answered right away, in that price point, in that arena, through there. So, but as always, you can jump onto our championsrealestateteam.com website here, and obviously search any of the active homes. We can get you set up on a sold home search. So if you're thinking of selling your house, you can keep an idea of what's going on in your neighborhood. So that you're educating yourself. We have our home buyers and home seller guides in there that you can basically click and download basically through our Google Docs in that aspect of it. So, but I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time here on Wednesday. It's a little bit chilly out, but it's the sun's shining, so it's a good day. It's a great day to go look at houses and that aspect of it. So do you have anything else, Russ, that you wanted to add on? Or
folks, get out there and buy a house. Values are climbing. This is a great time to buy. If you were buying a stock, you'd want to buy it on the way up. This is the way up.
Yep. There you go. So awesome. We will see everybody. Have a happy Easter in that regards, and then have a great weekend. And we will see you guys next week. And thank you again for listening and joining us. And if you have questions, comments, you can put them in the comments of the Facebook page or direct message, or my phone number is right there. 672-7670. Give Russ a holler at 290-8936. And we're here to coach and educate you, whether that's buying a house this week or next year. You know, I've got clients I'm working with that right now that we first talked in 2019, because I looked at my notes back and I was like, how long have we been looking at houses? But that's just something, getting them up to date on what's going on in the process, and making sure that they're good to go. So appreciate you, and talk to you guys soon. Thanks again, Russ, and we'll
Absolutely.
see you next week.